All right, welcome everybody. Should be all on here. Quick audible, my name is John Boriack. I've been a PIG member since 2007. I'm a lead investor on a few deals, and I am one of the 4 panelists here that are going to be talking about the importance of civic engagement for real estate investors. And then Claire Reeves is gracious enough to be hosting our slides here, and we'll be facilitating the Q&A session towards the end. But I was honored to be asked to participate on this. Civic engagement is a big deal to me, and I've grown a lot from it personally, and my business has benefited quite a bit from it as well. And so thank you for sticking with us, the Audible here, and we're going to get rolling. Before we move to kind of the slides and questions, where I want to be sure we introduce our panelists. So we have Patrick McGinnis, Karen Fisher, myself, and Matthew Haines. And so I'm going to let Patrick go first and give us kind of your minute elevator speech, and kind of what your history is with lifestyles, what you do for a living, and then what got you involved in what level of civic engagement.
Okay, thanks, John. Pat McGinnis here. I'm a medical doctor. Got involved in lifestyles about 10 years ago as a passive investor, and I still am a passive investor. But I've been involved in various forms of elected office. I was elected to the Friendswood City Council 2010, 2013, re-elected. I didn't run in 2016, but I was appointed to an office on their Downtown Economic Development Corporation. So that's one avenue that you can consider. I'm also quite involved in party politics with the Republican Party, and now I'm actually the chairman of the Galveston County Republican Party. There are many avenues that you can get involved in at the party level, starting with a precinct chair is kind of the most grassroots area of an elected office. I'm not involved in the school board, but that is also another grassroots area of elected office for some of you to consider. So I will stop there, and let's hear from our other panelists.
Perfect. Thank you, Patrick. Karen, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, y'all. I'm Karen Fisher, and my husband, David, and I, we joined Lifestyles back in April of 2009 in San Antonio. I was still at the time a nurse in the U.S. Air Force. David and I currently own 39 properties throughout the state of Texas. 3 of them are syndicated. The rest we IRO and self-manage. David and I, we turned 70,000 into 10 million, which was all because of what Lifestyles taught us. So we became financially free. And in doing that, I was able to give back to my community and strengthen my business. And so for me, I always say that the apartment association is a symbiotic relationship with what Lifestyles teaches us. So when I got involved in the apartment association, I obtained my certified apartment manager and independent rental owner professional national certifications. I chaired the independent rental owner committee. I'm currently the political action committee chair. I am a member of the government affairs committee, and I sit on the board of directors with the apartment association. And for me, the thing is that a lot of those committees, they're comprised of people that don't really understand the needs and the views of what IROs are. So it is up to you guys to be the voice. But also women, it's an empowering industry, and we can make a difference. And I even wrote a 4-part series on the San Antonio Apartment Association Residents magazine about women IROs, and all of those were the Super Women Lifestyles members. But what I get back from from San Antonio Apartment Association, I always bring back to the Lifestyles members during our monthly lead and inspiring lead meetings. And this helps continue to strengthen those leaders of the industry. Thanks.
Very, very good. Thank you, Karen. We're happy to have you here. You're going to add a lot, I can tell. Matthew, you want to give us a quick rundown?
I'll try to be brief. So I'm actually a city councilman. I'm in my 5th term in the thriving metropolis of Shady Shores. But part of what we're going to talk about later is getting beyond just city council or doing other things. I'm also the president of Child Protective Services for Denton County, which is something that I get to give back on because of the fact of what I've done with Lifestyles Unlimited. I'm on the legislative committee for the Apartment Association of Greater Dallas. I'm on their board. I'm incoming chair of the National Apartment Association's IRO committee, and I can't wait to see what we can do with that over the next couple of years, because it's not just a one-year commitment. It's about who's going to come behind you and what are you going to do to change things long term.
Very good, very good. I'm excited to have you as the NA IRO chair as well. Seeing that coming. So my brief story is got involved with Lifestyles in 2007. Have been and did single family, done multifamily, did an IRO deal. I've done 6 deals as a lead investor. I've made a passive investment now, so I'm maturing. And so I really started getting involved in what you would call civic engagement through the apartment association, kind of like Karen and Matthew. I'm in Houston, so I joined the Houston Apartment Association when I first started in the business, but I really got involved in like 2015, so about 5 or 6 years ago. And over the last 5 or 6 years, have continued to volunteer on different committees and opportunities that opened up there. And a few years ago, I tricked them into making me their leader. And so I get to serve this year as the 2021 HAA president. And that has opened a few other doors as well. So I serve on the management district for the West Chase Management District Board of Directors. So it's like an HOA, like a glorified HOA for the West Chase District. I sit on that board where I have some property. And then I've served on various task forces and committees, especially in the last year as COVID hit and our elected officials were scrambling to figure out how to navigate housing policies over the last year with rental assistance programs and eviction moratoriums. I was tapped to be on a couple of those committees and was happy to be able to add my voice as well to that. So we're going to move through some questions today that help hopefully overcome some preconceived maybe objections towards getting involved, some obstacles in your head of like, man, I don't have enough time, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't have the experience, and then also talk about the values and the importance of getting involved. And civic engagement is a pretty wide umbrella. That can be everything from an elected official to various volunteer opportunities and committees and apartment associations, and we've got a wide array of backgrounds with this panel, so I'm excited to dive in. So Claire, can you move on to our next slide here? Excuse me. I thought this was an important quote that Lynn threw in there. All politics is local, and that is so true. And I say this all the time. When people go, we have such a blessing to be able to go vote in this country. And often the big name elections get all the runway. The presidential election, maybe a senator election, but very few people engage with and care about their local elections and their local stuff. And I say all the time, the person that's your JP at your court, or your county constable, or your fire chief, they affect your lives a hell of a lot more than the president of the United States. Those, diving into those elections and making those educated decisions are way more important than the big headline elections. So plug for a PAC there, get involved in a Apartment Association PAC and get to know that. And then that bottom quote there from Thomas Jefferson, we in America do not have government by the majority, we have government by the majority who participate. And so, beyond showing up on election day and voting, getting engaged and plugging into civic engagement at all levels is that part of that participation. All right, so we have 2 slides with some questions on it. Let's move to the first one, and we'll get to hearing from our panelists. First off, we want to talk about using your story, and we picked that title very strategically. Every single one of you has a story, has a background that matters. And it's all about figuring out how to use your particular story and your life, your story, your business to impact the decision makers for good, to make the right decisions. And I think a first objection that a lot of people come up with is I could never plug in or get elected or volunteer. I'm not known. I'm not some famous guy. I won't know what to do. And that's not true. Your first objection, you don't have to be a known name to be involved. Karen, I'll kick you off of this. What is kind of your thoughts on this first point of, you have to have a lot of connections or be known to be involved to get started?
Actually, to me, it's on the contrary. A lot of these local representatives, they when they think of a landlord, they think of either these big conglomerates of white men, and I'm not trying to stereotype, but it pretty much
right.
is that stigma. And if if you just address them and actually give them that insight that they don't have, you think that they know everything about every aspect of every industry, and they really don't. But if you just share your story and actually just let them know and give them that understanding of what their potential vote or what they implement, how it can either drastically help your business or just be detrimental. The main thing is that you don't need to be a big person. You just need to get out there and use your voice.
Very true. Patrick, Matthew, you have anything to add?
Yeah, when I ran for Friendswood City Council, I was a no-name nobody. I hadn't really been involved before, but there was a big hot-button issue in the city at that time, and I brought a kind of a fresh, different perspective to that election, and I won. But I will also say there are a dozen other ways to get involved in your city without being elected. Friendswood has at least 12 citizen commissions that people volunteer for. And kind of one door opens to another and another. And before you know it, you are in circles with, the justice of the peace or the sheriff or the county commissioners, et cetera, because they see that you're concerned about your community and you're there to help.
Very, very true. Matthew, were you a big known name when you first started plugging in and engaging?
Well, I can't say I was, unfortunately. Guys, I'll tell you, this is so easy. If you just get involved in this, next thing you know, you're in the middle of stuff that you didn't even know you had the ability to be involved in. They're looking for you to give them information, to give them insight. So it's not about being the person that has 500 units. It's about the person who has 10 units that employs 2 people. So don't think about it from the perspective of, oh, I only have 1 house, or I only have 10 houses. They're the people you want to hear about because you're the person that's employing the people that pay the bills. So don't think twice about getting involved just because you're not a large company.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll tag onto that real quick in that, as I have grown, my portfolio now has 6 properties, 1,500 units. I am still a very, very, very small fish in the multifamily world. But still, even as a small fish in the overall industry, over the last year, I've been very involved with different media interviews and legislative efforts to try to combat eviction moratoriums and things like that. And it is amazing, especially when talking with people from the Democratic Party, how fast a wall goes up when they hear that you have even multiple properties. And it's so much more powerful and impactful for them to hear from, get the opinion from someone who has an 8 unit and maybe has 1 employee and is what they call like a small mom and pop, they call them landlords. We try to stick to property owners or housing providers for our terminology. But your story as a smaller owner or as a passive investor is just as, if not more impactful than my story as a multi-site owner operator. So that's super important. Claire, you want to go to the next point? Let's talk about the time commitment, because I know that can be a big turnoff for a lot of people. They think it's a full-time job, especially, Patrick and Matthew with y'all as members of city council. What kind of time commitments are y'all talking about? And we'll start with Matthew on this one.
Get it. You guys are rock stars. You're already business people. the decisions that we make as city council persons, or if we're on a committee or anything else, these are easy decisions for us. So we go in there. I've been on council for almost 10 years, and I don't think I've ever spent more than 5 to 6 hours in a single month, because it's just not necessary. The decisions are simple. As a business person, you know what the right decision is. And this is one of the really cool things about getting involved, is that you don't have to spend that much time, but you have to be willing to do it.
Patrick?
Yeah, what I would do, we had one meeting per month, typically on a Monday night. So I would spend Sunday afternoon reading through all of the related materials, 2, 3, 4 hours of study, because I always wanted to be prepared for the discussion. Matthew was right. It's not a big time sink. Maybe when I was brand new, I was a little bit more studious about it, but after a little while, you kind of know the issues and you know the people, and you know where your constituency wants your city to be.
Karen, with your involvement in the apartment association, and you listed off a ton of committees you're involved in. What's kind of the average time commitment, say, for a given committee?
Usually it's about an hour a month where each committee meets. But it's also, so I like it, so I am all in it, and I really enjoy it because it really does benefit my business. But I would say that if you feel that you don't have the time, then you can use your money, vote with your wallet, because that in itself is also a really big impact on legislation.
Absolutely. Yeah, very much agree. Claire, can you bring up points 3 and 4 both at the same time here? Perfect. Okay, I want to think these are kind of related, so I wanted to cover them at the same time. Another important aspect of using your story is proving that there are great owner operators out there that exist. Our industry often gets mischaracterized in public opinion as being greedy slumlords, and that's if those are far and away minorities. Or minority owners of our industry. The vast majority of people who own and operate rental property are good people who want to help the residents and come up with win-win solutions, which stands right in line with people's ethics and values. And so being able to put those on display is important. And I'll kind of throw this out to anybody. What have maybe been a couple opportunities over the last year and a half, especially, maybe Matthew or Karen, somebody to prove or demonstrate that there are good quality owner operators out there with good ethics and values? Matthew.
Well, as we talk to the legislators that we speak to on a regular basis as you get engaged, one of the things that we need to remind them is that we are small owners of businesses, and that we're doing everything that we can to help these residents find their way through this. And I think one of the things that's been hardest over the last couple of years is trying to get that message out. But this is what we do. And when we deliver the story as a small owner operator to a congressman or woman, or anybody even on the local level, when we do that, we're reminding them that we have to feed our families as well. And I think that's been a hard lesson for them through the last 2 years. But for most of us in Lifestyle and the Apartment Association, we've done a reasonably good job of that. But the legislation that has occurred has not necessarily been consistent with helping us. And that's one of the reasons that it's so critical that the broader group of people, which I know is thousands of people in the Lifestyles Unlimited group, get involved and say, hey, I want you to hear my story, and not just sit back and say, well, somebody else will do it.
That's huge. I hear it's really easy to complain about things going down and the way legislation happens or orders that get passed, and then not actually do anything about it and just complain. And it's like, unless you're engaged in trying to change things, you really don't have a lot of room there. So Karen, what would you say to all that?
Actually, Matthew said it perfectly. But really it's not only, it's just giving them the eye opening that yes, we do need to survive, and this is our livelihood. So that's a big thing.
Huge. It's a big part for me too, as I've gotten engaged, especially in the more the different housing policy committees and management districts. It's a big piece of the give back for me. You know, the industry's been really good to me and my family, and it's part of being able to, like it says, stand for my ethics and values and really make a difference. This leans into that big time. Cool. So our next time, you can use your story to give your time and energy to address community needs. That's kind of what I was just talking about. I'll throw this out to any of y'all. There we go. And then our last one is also, using education and advocacy, using your voice to persuade decision makers to address community needs. So those are kind of, relevant as well. Anybody want to have any comments on those?
Well, just one other thing. Don't just use your story, be the story. You are the story, and think about it that way, because that's so critical. Be the story. You're the person that they're not thinking about when they decide some of the things that they choose to do.
John, I'll add that, I'm a passive investor, but I often will relate the Lifestyles method of getting a property and improving it and making a great place to live, making a nice home for people in these apartment complexes, no matter what the size of them. So I think that resonates, that I'm an investor and we create nice communities where people are proud to live. And I would say I was surprised as an elected official how quickly I became in the regular circles of, say, my county commissioners or my state rep or my state senator. So you'd be surprised the opportunities that will come up for you to educate and advocate those sorts of people.
I talked to, I'm not going to say a lot, quite a few elected officials, both in Austin and Washington, whose opinion on a certain housing policy that impacts us greatly is massively influenced by some one-off story they heard about either a tenant or a renter that went through a hard time, or an owner that went through a hard time. And it doesn't take a lot to have a big impact on the minds of these legislators that impact all of our lives in a huge, huge way. Before we kind of a little bit related to this is I want to comment for a second on, I mentioned that being involved in different committees and volunteer roles is a great way to give back into an industry and a world that's been so good to you. But there's a lot of selfish reasons, quite frankly, to get involved also, or I say selfish, it sounds bad, but it's a lot of benefits to your business, and that give back. And I know all y'all can speak to this, but I know in my personal experience, Patrick said this, when you start volunteering on some of these committees, you're all of a sudden like in the room. Like, you get in the door with some pretty high profile decision makers and other business people, and your network gets expanded. I mean, just this morning, I got invited through the apartment association to a fundraising breakfast for a local JP. There's probably, 800 people there. And just walking around and talking to people, everybody's trying to introduce you to other people, and you're trying to make connections. And I met a neighborhood developer that lives in my area. I met a commercial property, or lady that owns a commercial property management company doing like retail and office space and things like that. I met a representative from my area that was telling me about some new development that was planned. I mean, those kinds of conversations just happen, and connections just happen by being in the room. So if I stumble across an opportunity for some land that would be a great spot for a neighborhood to be built, I know they got to call. If I happen to see an opportunity for a commercial space, I know a lady that manages commercial property space. And that was just this morning, one breakfast. Really expands your network in a big way by making those connections. And then you become just in the know about future plans and developments and where roads are going to go in and where new office space is going to go in and retail. And it helps you make smart investment decisions. I want to be in this area and not that area. Hey, I can pay market price for this property because I know they're going to put in this huge park right next to it that's going to be a great selling point in 2 years. Those kinds of things just are you're privy to, that you wouldn't have any access to that kind of thing otherwise. And you're well positioned to take advantage of those. And not only those are kind of offensive reasons to get involved, right? You know what's coming down the road, but also you're well positioned when you're on the front lines of developing legislation and different social programs to weather storms, with obviously COVID being the most recent example. When I got tapped to serve on Harris County's Housing Stability Task Force when the pandemic first hit, and was instrumental. I was on the very first committee call that came up with the City of Houston rental assistance program that ended up doling out $200 million of rental assistance. And I helped kind of direct how that was structured and what the qualifications were going to be. So I was in the know about millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of rental assistance that was going to be coming down the pipeline. And we as a company were then well positioned to know, hey, these are the qualifications. We need to call this person. If you got a problem, you call Renee. You just knew what was going on and could weather the storm or the crisis a whole lot better because of the pre-positioning I had done to be on the front lines of this civic engagement role. And then lastly, it does a lot when you're involved in these different committees and the apartment associations. It builds your personal brand, your company brand. People now know you not only as, hey, you're the apartment guy, you're also on this committee, you're on that committee, and you testified in front of this hearing, and you served on this elected position. It adds a whole lot of credibility to your personal name, personal brand as you look to grow your business and grow your portfolio. I could have rambled for a lot there, but did y'all resonate with any of y'all, or can y'all think of any other kind of more honestly personal benefits to getting involved? I'll get a lot of yeses from Karen. I feel like Karen has some thoughts there.
You touched on a lot of it. I mean, really, it's not selfish. We join Lifestyle so that we can better our lives, become financially free, and then start giving back. But like you said, I mean, you've increased your networking, you've branded your company and who you are, and now you are making an impact, especially Houston being so big. So just by one person alone, the impact that you've made for so many thousands of properties, and not only just Houston, but possibly you've influenced the state. So that is huge. And it just took one person. So can you imagine what thousands of Lifestyles members can do if you get involved and you take action? I mean, it's just instrumental to, it would behoove you not to, in other words, so.
Patrick, Matthew, any other thoughts before we kind of move on to the more practical piece of this?
I think you said it.
Cool. Good deal. So, if you came into this thinking, oh, I don't have the connections to get involved, I don't have the time to get involved, I don't have the know-how to get involved, hopefully this has given you kind of a taste of the breadth of options or ways to get involved in these different volunteer positions and overcome some of that. You do have the time. Your story does matter, and we need it often way more than those from the big guys that have a lot, maybe more perceived influence. It's more important really now than it ever has been, and you can do it. So that's kind of the reasons too, and hopefully we've overcome maybe some preconceived objections that you all had to that. Now let's talk more about kind of the back half, where the rubber meets the road, how to actually get engaged and how to plug in. So first off, Karen and I especially, and Matthew mentioned apartment associations several times. Matthew, I'll kick you off, and then Karen, you can add on after this. What are some ways somebody says, okay, yeah, I'm maybe I have an IRO deal, or maybe I'm just even a passive, or how do I get involved in an apartment association? Where do I start with that?
Well, I have to give credit to Mayor Stevens. I'll never forget, I was talking to her one day and she said, you should run for city council because you talk too much. And I love her to death. She passed at 102, and now I'm in my 5th term, and I had never even thought about running for local city council. And what most people don't realize is that we're all just trying to do the same thing. So it's such a wonderful thing to get involved in that. And there's parts of it that are a challenge, but the part of actually getting engaged and actually getting elected is not the hard part. That's actually the easy part. If you have your heart for helping your local community, then you're in the right place already. So I would tell people it's not difficult. Actually, nobody's run against me in 4 terms. No, everybody. I always say it's kind of they're either apathetic or they're happy with what I'm doing. So 5 terms later, I'm just kind of sitting here saying, okay, what can I do to help my community? And I'm going to say something that's really important here, because everybody thinks about, okay, well, I'm doing this, I'm working this job, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I run a whole bunch of different things, including the CPS. It actually gets easier the more things you do, because you have the access to the people that make the decisions more quickly. Once you're doing several things or 1 or 2 things. So if you ever thought, well, I can't do this one thing, or I can't do these 2 things, actually it's ironic. I find it easier to complete my jobs and my tasks now as an elected official, because I can get to the people that I need to talk to almost immediately, whether it's a state senator or a US representative, and they want to talk to you, because don't ever forget, they need a kitchen cabinet. They want people who will tell them what's going on at the street level. They don't want embellishment. They want to hear the reality of what's happening, and that's what they rarely get. So you have an opportunity, especially as an IRO or a small business, to give them information that they desperately need to make the right decisions for our organizations.
For sure. Yeah, half the battle is knowing who to call, who to talk to, and the more you get involved, the more you know. Karen, how does somebody who wants to get involved specifically in their local apartment association start? Like, if somebody's like, I know this is important, what do I do next?
It's so easy. It's pick up a phone call or just search on the website and join. And I would say that, if anything, the best reason, one of the many, but the best reason, are the forms. The leases are unstoppable. They are constantly scrutinized and always reviewed. So it's a very fair form. And why not join something that's going to improve and strengthen your operations as an owner? So it's very easy. You just call them and say you want to join. You want to be an IRO. And then on a local level, once you join in the local level, you automatically are a member of the state and then the national level. And last year, when Corona hit, it was so instrumental. Again, symbiotic relationship between Lifestyles with what Lynn did, and just constantly was helping us and guiding us through what we needed to do. And then Texas Apartment Association helped us as well, with different notices and letters and things of that nature, to try to really work hard on how to work together with what happened with the pandemic. So if it really was so huge to have Lifestyles and be a San Antonio Apartment Association member so that I can have that guidance with this unique situation.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And I know, as you know, I mentioned I'm the president of the Houston Apartment Association this year, and that has absolutely been, being involved in HAA has been the gateway to a myriad of other opportunities, on volunteer opportunities, and it's so amazing how, if you're just willing to show up to even the most basic open committee, but actually speak up and contribute and be a part, like an engaged member of that committee, you don't know who else is in the room. I've happened to be in the committee and had my numbers together and knew my stuff and provided some good opinions. And next thing you know, the guy that was on the other side of the room heard that and his ears perked up, and I got invited to serve on a more exclusive committee and then be part of a more exclusive meeting. And then one thing leads to another, and your network just grows like that. So, apartment associations, your local apartment association is always looking for people to step up and volunteer. And so there's going to be a triage of committees that you can be a part of, that anybody can join, that are open committees. You get involved in those by contacting the apartment association and saying, hey, how do I get involved? I know Houston has a class. Like, we have a class like maybe next week even, called How to Get Involved in HAA. And so there's going to be a triage of committees anybody can join and get involved in, and then contribute to those, engage in those, provide some relevant opinions, and you'll get asked. They're always, like I said, always farming new talent. So you will get sucked up into the more maybe exclusive committees with better opportunities by contributing in those more kind of grassroots opportunities. And you don't have to do much. It'll be there and network and contribute, and you'll get plugged. And that's how it all works, at least in the apartment association world. I'm sure it's the same, elsewhere as well.
John, would you recommend that passive investors join these as well? Because I'll confess, I am not a member of any apartment association.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak to necessarily other apartment associations. Matthew, Carey, you'll be able to fill out. One place that is always important and beneficial for even a passive investor to get involved is the Political Action Committee. So at HAA, we have a Political Action Committee. It's like $150 or something to join for the year. And then you get invited, those dollars are used to contribute and endorse certain candidates running for elected office. And then you get invited to luncheons where you get to hear about those elections that really matter. The school boards and the JP races and these city council positions, that's the only way I really stay informed about those local elections is through my apartment association PAC. So even if you're not an active operator of apartments, being involved kind of locally, that joining that PAC is an awesome gateway that can open up a lot more doors. Carey and Matthew, would you all agree with that?
Patrick, actually, one of the things I'll say is that depending on the organization, in most cases, if you are a member of a property that is a part of the apartment association, then you are a part of the apartment association. That's one of the advantages, even as an investor. So I would encourage you to pursue that further, because that's exactly what we want, is the passive investors in lifestyles to be more involved. I think that's one of the strengths that we have, because for every one lead, we have 20 passives. And it's my belief and my understanding at this point that you should and can be involved as a member of the apartment association. Karen, I think you've probably heard the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much. But it makes a big difference, because you could still contribute in a lot of different ways. Just being involved in a committee and spreading the word of what you've learned. So it's definitely engage.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've got some really strong apartment associations in Texas, especially. Houston, San Antonio, Central Texas, Dallas. We're blessed to have that for sure. Claire, you want to bring up the next 2 points here? Let's talk about kind of civic and local engagements here. So a couple other ways to get involved in addition to apartment associations is through local civic groups, your organizations that focus on community improvement, and then local and county committees. And then, so Patrick, I think you have some experience with the kind of the local county committees. You want to speak to these 2 points of how to get, what that looks like. How do I say, oh, I want to get involved in a civic group or a county committee?
Yeah, I would say start at your city's website or the school board's website and look for volunteer opportunities, and you'll be routed to one or more of these committees. In the city of Friendswood, there are at least 12 different committees. So if you have an expertise in design and gardening, well, in Friendswood, we have Keep Friendswood Beautiful. If you're a financial guy, or if you're a business guy or gal, we've got our economic development committee, et cetera. So you already have a skill set that is applicable to your city or at the county level. So I would just say, go to those websites, and you can probably volunteer all online now. The other thing we haven't talked about is the Chambers of Commerce, which is a very active civic group where, again, you can network and help meet people and help them understand about the real estate industry from an owner, operator, or an investor perspective.
That's awesome. Good. Karen, Matthew, y'all have anything to add to these points?
I would say that you could search online or even reach out to your local apartment association, and they do have a lot of local task forces where they need to have, especially there's a lot of tenant advocate groups, but there aren't owner operators, and so it tends to lean one way. But they need to have something that's balanced and actually hear from the owners that we're not the money hungry slumlords. We're actually here to benefit the whole entire community. So I definitely, if you're not an apartment association member, you can still get involved and do those task forces.
Awesome. Matthew, can you think of any other examples of these kind of local civic groups or county committees?
Well, if you want to get engaged, one of the first points of engagement is, I mean, there's simple things. I mean, it's not complicated. It might be keep Shady Shores beautiful, or it could be planning and zoning. There's all these environments that they're asking. I mean, if I went out to Denton County, where I live, there'd probably be requests for 20 or 30 residents just saying, hey, we need somebody to be on these task force. And all you have to do is say, hey, I want to do this. And if you're genuine and you want to help, you're going to make a mark on the community very quickly. And when you do that, I will say it sometimes can be challenging, because some of these groups want to just be the 10 ninnies that have coffee every month. But if you want to do something and make it happen, you will get noticed very quickly. It's not difficult. It doesn't take much. And I would encourage people to get involved in those things, because you care about those things for your community anyway. And it's not necessarily just the community you live in, it's the communities that you invest in. So I think there's a huge opportunity there with a very minimal investment that we do. And that's what we want to do. We're not building complexes of tenants. We're building communities of residents. And I know Karen's heard me say that over and over again. And I know John has too. That's the Lifestyles model. We're building communities of residents, and that's what we're all about. And that makes a difference. And the civic leaders latch onto that. And I'll just say, one of the things that's really interesting is that when you're doing that and they realize you're doing that, that's where your next deal comes from. Yep. Because they want you to buy the next deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're the first one to get a heads up about a distressed property or a different opportunity that, if there's a property that's getting a lot of write-ups, a lot of code violations, you're going to be in the know about that before anybody else. Very good point. Yeah, and then
I've got my eye on 3 right now.
There you go. There you go. It's happening. I like it. And you think like HOA boards or management district boards is another one that's a great opportunity. When I got involved with the West Chase Management District, which is one of the bigger ones in Houston, I didn't have to get elected. I just had property in the area and I asked and I got approved and I got chosen. And now I'm on these committees making $100 million decisions about where to put roads and how to develop infrastructure and where the parks are going to go, and like you get in the know real fast. It's really eye-opening. It's cool. All right, we got about 10 more minutes here. Clay, you're going to bring up the next 2 points. These are kind of related as well. Even if you don't have a lot of time to get involved and volunteer, you can still use your story to make an impact at city council meetings and by calling and writing your representatives and getting involved that way. Patrick, Matthew, with y'all's experience on city council, how impactful was it when you had a local resident come and voice their opinion at a city council meeting? And we'll open with Patrick.
It was very impactful, but it was even more impactful when several people came to speak on the same issue. That you can tell when there's an important issue in the city when several folks show up at 7 o'clock on a Monday night to sometimes to let you have it because they're really unhappy about a certain decision or pending decision. So absolutely, when you come and speak or call and write, it is noticed. Absolutely.
Matthew, any comments? Or Karen?
I'm just trying to frame it. Again, back to what happens in government, and after 10 years in government, the best way I can explain it is a way that Mark Burrows, who was the former mayor of Denton, said to me. I was having breakfast with him one day, and I said, well, how do I help? And he said, be part of the kitchen cabinet. And I'm like, what does that mean? He says, well, Matthew, everybody knows that every single person who's in government has a cabinet, right? Everybody knows that. The president has a cabinet. He said, be a part of the kitchen cabinet. And he said, these are the people I listen to. Those are the people when something comes up, whether it's related to roads, whether it's related to housing, these are the people I call because I trust them, because they have an unbiased view of the rest of the world, and they will give me an idea of what's really going on. And if there's something we can become over time, it's part of the kitchen cabinet. And I'm thankful to say that I'm part of the kitchen cabinet of several U.S. Congressmen that will literally call me. I don't have to call them anymore. They call me and say, hey, what's going on? And I think that's one of the things that we all strive to. And it's coming back to what you said earlier. Don't embellish. Just be strong and say, here's the impact of what we're seeing. Here's what you can do. Here's what we have to do as small business owners. So if there was any closing thing, I would say be a part of the kitchen cabinet, or strive to be a part of the kitchen cabinet, because frankly, once you get there, it's really fun, and it doesn't take long to get there. It doesn't take much. You just have to be genuine in your care for the district that you're in, and your congressman or your local state representative will appreciate that, because they remember, we don't have the answers, all of us. They don't either. So let's not look at them as the altruist, they know everything. they are looking for you to be a part of their kitchen cabinet. And that's important for us to remember.
That's huge. That's huge. Absolutely. Great feedback. Karen, can you speak kind of to these points of, attending city council meetings or, or influencing representatives? I know you had some experience doing that. Have you seen
I
that?
actually, most definitely. Here's a story. Last year, during the pandemic, San Antonio wanted to follow suit with Dallas and Austin to add a 60-day notice to cure, meaning when we are giving a resident a notice to vacate for non-payment of rent, they wanted to tack on 60 days, and if you were a covered property, the additional 30 days. So we're talking 3 months of no rent. So with a lot of local IROs, that the majority of them were Lifestyles members and other IROs, we went and we addressed city council, and we just like Matthew said, don't embellish and just be genuine. So we expressed truly what a negative financial hardship that would have caused us as small business owners if that would have gone through. And thank God it did not go through. The motion had failed, but it was really huge because they got to understand and have an understanding that, again, we are not this horrible slumlord. We really do care for our community, and expressing that and addressing them directly. And we had, I want to say, at least 30 people to just address one agenda. And that really made a huge impact because they didn't anticipate such a turnout. But not only that, even if you're not involved in the apartment association, you can also legislate. You could go and address your state representatives as well as your national representatives. And we've done that. We've done a legislative day where we will address and lobby for our industry. Same thing as I went to DC and met Will Hurd, and we sat on a one-to-one and discussed all these things. So it was a great way, and how empowering to have been able to, this piddly little person here, to talk to Will Hurd and other representatives, federal representatives. It was just mind blowing, but it was also, our constitutional right, and I was able to use my voice, and anyone can do it.
Man, that's awesome. That's such a tangible example. Yeah, go ahead.
John, can I throw one other thing in there? And we've been doing this for a couple of years now. Guys, encourage your staff to come to those meetings with these legislators and introduce them, because most of our staff have never met a legislator, and that makes all the difference in the world when they say, oh, this is just someone like me, and all of a sudden they become interested in the voting process, even if they never have been before. So please make sure that we're introducing them along the way.
Absolutely. That's huge. That's huge. Karen, I love that story. What a tangible example of 30 owners showing up to a city council meeting and influence, probably save the industry hundreds of millions of dollars in delinquent rent because y'all took a day to go to do that. I mean, that's an incredible case study there. It's awesome. Patrick, do you have something on that?
Yeah, don't forget about their staff members. A congressman can't be everywhere. They have staffers locally and in Washington, D.C., and be friendly and professional and nice to those staff members as well. Years ago, I was a congressional fellow, and I worked for a senator on Capitol Hill for years. And I'm telling you, people that called in and sent us emails, all of that was collated and summarized for the senator of whom I worked. So believe me, they are looking for your input, and they take it serious. I wouldn't follow someone with a camera into a bathroom, as happened this weekend. That's not a good idea.
Yeah, I'll back that up also, that I've been part of several legislative days with the department associations where we go to Austin or go to DC and get to speak to legislators, and in talking with their staff, like Patrick was saying, who really, like, the staff is the neck that turns the head wherever it needs to go. And the staff has told me that, speaking on calling and writing representatives, a phone call is worth about 100 blast emails that they get, and an in-person visit is worth about 100 phone calls. So, any time you have to actually pick up the phone and call the office, write letters, the mass emails are great. Do that too, but also don't forget the phone calls. And if you have time to visit in person, even better. All right, I know we're bumping up against our time, and I want to leave some Q&A. Claire, can you throw those last two?
John, I want to add one other thing on that. I'm sorry.
No, you're
for everybody who's on here, it's really important to understand. So when you get to a congressman or a senator's office and you get that person on the phone, let's not forget that person probably graduated Princeton and has an IQ of 178. And that person is probably going to influence everything. So as an example, I talk to my congressman's office every month, and I get the call from the chief of staff, and that's fine. You do not have to talk to the actual congressman or the senator. It's so important that you understand that that person that you're talking to is probably going to be the person that is going to influence not only this congressman, but let's remember, in 3 years or 4 years, they're probably going to be working for another congressman.
Yep, I would honestly rather talk to a chief of staff or a policy director than I would the actual guy or girl, for sure, every time.
Me
cool.
too.
All right, Claire, let's throw up those last 2 bullet points if you don't mind, just to wrap this all up. Get involved. Do it in a campaign, a political party. If you have time to run for office, do that. At the very least, research candidates and show up to the polls and vote. Patrick, I know you served on city council for Friendswood for a while and have since moved to now become the Galveston County chair for the Republican Party. Tell us about kind of how that transition happened, what that's been like, and why that's important.
Well, I'll start with why it's important, because one of the main things parties do is create legislative priorities, and that starts at the precinct level. If you have an idea where you go to vote, you can give that to your precinct chair, and it will go up to the next level, which is called the Senate District. And the Senate District makes policy recommendations, and that goes to the state convention, and the state party, both Democrat and Republican, come up with a platform and legislative priorities that they push within the state, within our state government. So, and again, it's easy to get involved in a political party at the grassroots level.
Very, very, very cool. Yeah, absolutely. Gary, Matthew, any comments on these?
I would think just get involved in grassroots efforts. And you can, if you, just like you said, if you research your candidate, you can get involved if you really believe what they stand for, that they also are definitely pro-apartment industry. You can do that, or you can even do block walks. So you still can make an effort and get involved in those little things. So such little minor things really make a big impact. So
It's not about running for office. Even if you go and decide that you're going to be involved in a committee at the local level, all of a sudden you have influence on what happens. So if you want to run for office, I'll tell you, I mean, it's not difficult. Obviously I did it. That worked out. But if you want to get involved in a committee on your city or your state or your county level, and there's all of them available, do it. Just every one of us that's a small IRO should be involved in this stuff. And it's one of the things that's always amazed me that we have not done a better job as a group of thousands of IROs. We have 4,036 IROs in the state right now. that are known, which means we have probably 16,000. I'm amazed that we have not done a better job of mobilizing that group, because that's a huge group of people that can make a huge difference long-term in our businesses as small business owners across the state.
Awesome.
John, I'll
Yeah,
just
very much agree.
Add one more thing to give everyone the scale involved. Every county is divided into precincts based on population. And every precinct can have an elected official called the precinct chair that then can contribute to the party governance. So for example, in Galveston County, we have about 90 precinct chairs. However, in Harris County, because it's so populous, there are about 1,000 different precincts. So there's lots of opportunity, as I said, at the grassroots level, that lowest office that you can jump into, the precinct chair level.
Awesome. Good to know. All right, we're about to wrap up, but we do have time for some Q&A. If you have a question that you would like to ask our panel here, use the GoToWebinar portal there to submit that question, and then Claire will make sure we get those answered. But I hope this has been a educational session. If you walked into this thinking, I don't have the time, I don't have the influence, I don't know what to do, hopefully you've overcome those objections and demonstrated it's not hard. You can do it. Your story does matter and has a massive impact, often bigger impact than the big boys would with these legislators and the people that make the decisions. So whether it's through an apartment association, whether it's through a political party, a county chair, do something to plug in and engage and use your story to leverage your influence for the good of the industry, the good of your community. Claire, do we get any questions submitted we need to cover before we wrap this up?
We do. So Ryan
Awesome.
Phillips from Tyler, Texas asks, do your businesses ever suffer due to political scraps? Seems as though the cancel culture can turn on people and in parentheses capitalists and keep people from serving their community.
Great question. So have y'all ever experienced any kind of blowback against your business or your property for being engaged, civically?
All right, which one of us wants to take that one?
Well, I'm just a passive investor, so that maybe isn't as applicable for me.
Well, I'll jump in, at least in my experience. I'll say there maybe has been some, it's been minor, but the benefits I've received from my engagement to my business have far outweighed any kind of negative blowback that we could have gotten.
And I can follow up on that and say that we had a terrible incident a couple of weeks ago, but because we already had the relationships, it was far less impact than it would have been in our community. So I would say absolutely no. If you build those relationships in advance, you're going to be far better off.
Legitimate concern though, and often you get a lot of people, especially honestly bigger companies, who don't want to engage, don't want to voice their opinion because they're afraid of getting that canceled. And we have less exposure to that as smaller IROs, or less risk of that, I would say. But like I said, the benefits you get, in my experience, far outweigh that risk. Karen, do you have any experience with that or any comments?
No, I think you guys covered it.
Cool. Claire, what's next?
And then, can we join committees in the county, city where our property is located, but we don't live?
Yes.
I would say,
all right,
in my little town, there's probably a bias that they want Friendswood residents to be on local committees. So it's maybe of a caveat there.
And it's going to depend on the position. Like a city council position, yeah, you probably need to live in the city. But the apartment association, I live in Tomball, which is an outskirt, kind of a suburb of Houston, but I'm president of the Houston Apartment Association. They don't care. They want to, as long as you're local there to some degree, you can be involved. On the board of directors for the West Chase Management District. I don't live there. I just own property there. And so there's a lot of volunteer positions that are open by owning property or just even living in the vicinity without necessarily living in that specific area.
One of the first things that I would tell people to do is get a hold of your police department and do ride-alongs. You can do it in a city that you're in, and I do them on a regular basis. So if do a daytime and a nighttime ride-along. They're totally different. Daytime is reactive, nighttime's reactive, but at least if you do that, they understand that you care. And I do it every 6 months on all of my properties. I can't do it forever as we grow, but as they get to know you, then they go, oh, that's Matthew. That's the guy that owns this. That's the guy that owns that. And it makes all the difference in the world because they know you care about the community. So by all means, I don't know who asked that question, but get out there and get involved with them from that perspective.
Okay, and I think just one more question. What resources do I have in Arizona to volunteer?
I would assume there's at least a Phoenix or Arizona Apartment Association that you could get plugged in, but we all have similar, I would think, committees and civic organizations to get plugged in. Do y'all have any other takes on that?
I think you're spot on, John.
So we all
don't-
kind of go ahead.
I say you probably don't need to do a ride along in Irving, Texas.
We're more Texas based here, but I would think the overwhelming majority of the committees and opportunities we've talked about are available in other states as well.
I've never seen a city that doesn't have ride-alongs and everything else, and that's your first step into getting involved with the community, is understanding the community. Because I will tell you that in my experience, very few property owners ever bother to do that. So please, I would please encourage you to do it.
Very good. Anything else, Claire?
No, I think that's it for the evening.
All right, good deal. Man, thank you everybody for giving us an hour and a half of your evening tonight. I hope this has been informational, educational, inspirational. We got some incredible leaders on this panel. Thank you so much, Patrick, Karen, and Matthew, for being here tonight, and also all you guys do to better our industry, better our city, better our communities. It's inspiring, honestly, to me to hear from y'all and know that this is going on in other cities around the state, and it's a cool effort. So I hope that we get more people involved. Like Matthew said, every one of your voices counts, it matters, and it's desperately needed. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the week.
Good night. Thanks.
Thank you so much.